Stupid ass sucker, ruining your youth while in another life saying we love you. It's time for another episode of Through the Pages. This is an interactive interview podcast where we talk to people of the creative ilk, find out where they've come from, where they are, and where they hope to be. And today I am joined by a very special guest, one I am very nervous and fanboying about meeting, lead singer of the band Grand Theft Audio, the one and only Jay Butler. Jay, welcome to the cast.
Hey, how are you?
No, man, thanks so much for coming out here and taking the time to discuss a few things with you. I really do appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, no problem. Just for background purposes, my friend Harkov311 and I, we've been fans of GTA for 20-something odd years. Blame Everyone was our summer slam for a long time. We would be bombing hills and backcountry roads, blasting Rock the House. So we've had quite the experience. Yeah, he's extremely jealous that I'm actually taking time to meet with you. So I'll be sure to give him a shout out.
Yeah, dude, yeah.
Okay, so I've got a few questions for you. So I start this with the same question every time, and that's how did you get started in music?
How did I get started in music? I think, how did I very first get started, or what got me interested in music? I suppose they're like two different things. So I first got interested in music really through my mum. My mum was like a really hugely musical person and still is. She's like, to this day, she's 80 something now. Sorry, Mum, for saying that, but she was really disappointed. But she was going to see Faith No More for the first time last year, and then the whole pandemic hit, and she couldn't go, and da. But she likes everything, so she's a real music person. It was always around in the house. And my first break, really, of getting in a band was just me and some guys who I knew who just all kind of looked the same as me, really, and that was like the whole punk thing. And literally couldn't play. Literally made a band to learn an instrument, and that was the way you did it then. So that was kind of my introduction to it, really. And just put a band, wrote songs, and then played your first show within the space of about a month, and was terrible. So that was just hold your nose and take your medicine. It was one of those things, which is a great way to get into music, I think.
The drunker you get, the better you sound.
Yeah, definitely. And we were like legends in our own living room at that point. We were, determined we were going to be Sex Pistols Part 2, and I think we probably had more in common with like Circus than we did with the Sex Pistols. But whatever, we tried.
I mean, everybody aspires. I mean, I aspire to be like Nine Inch Nails, but that ain't never going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I don't. I'm a believer in it doesn't matter what road you take to get there, as long as something gets you there. And I know sillier ideas to start a band than just wanting to look cool in a cool pair of trousers. I've heard of worse reasons, and that was when I was that age. It was kind of a thing. It just went with the look. If you were into punk rock and you kind of looked punk rock, it was like, oh, you better form a band. So that was a great thing with it. It was one of the good things about punk.
Oh yeah. I mean, so then you mentioned the Sex Pistols. Were they some of your biggest musical inspirations?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, for me, it was really because I was too young for punk. That was my older brother's era. The first time around, my original punk, and so you end up with a lot of hand-me-down records, and you kind of wanted that excitement. But for me, really, I mean, I was a kid in the '80s, so it was kind of hip hop was happening. There was still that punk thing happening and the hardcore thing happening, but you were lucky. You had a big mix of stuff that was exciting and new, and I think you just cherry picked a lot of bits of all different influences, like Public Enemy and BDP and all those bands were like, they were really important to all the kids at my school. But then at the same time, the Clash, the Sex Pistols, which were considered, old-fashioned a bit, was still massive. And then obviously you had like Fugazi and those sort of bands starting in the later 80s, and they were like all really important.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, and it's funny you talk about punk a lot because Harkov and I often talk about like how old school GTA of the Blame Everyone era was kind of like industrial music, but with your vocals, it was more of a punk kind of shouty kind of feel. So I can kind of see the punk influences.
Yeah, I can't sing, basically. That's what it is. I think that band, like we had a lot of, between us as friends and as members of the band, we had so many diverse background influences, like Rich is, totally gets that metal thing, and Ralph had the, like the sort of techno thing and the dancing, and so together it was, a real, sounds corny, but it was a real melting pot, big argument over who plays what on the stereo.
Well, no, it's funny you mentioned that because I saw the interview you did with Sputnik Music, and you kind of talked about how you really didn't have a specific genre. So it's like you got rock, okay, you got punk, okay, you got electronica, techno, you got it. So, like, I always associated Blame Everyone as kind of like almost a wall of sound. Like even like in Death to the Infidels, in the beginning, you just get slammed with that wall, and then you get hit with that kind of breakbeat, almost Prodigy era kind of like fast beat. Then you started doing the shouting and whatnot. So it makes perfect sense about that amalgamation.
Yeah. And I think when we started as well, I think one of the things that was really strange about this band is it wasn't like a lot of bands I've been in. It wasn't a gang of mates who'd known each other for years. And, like bands had this kind of formula to them. And even the way it came together was, I mean, we knew each other, but we weren't like the best of friends or anything. I'd never met Ralph. I knew Chris. Chris was kind of my ally in it. I knew him the best. Rich I toured with, but, he was a drummer in another band, which is, I'd never allow myself to talk to drummers at that point, so it was, it was, so the band itself, I think that's the sound of us trying to find our common ground a lot of the time. And we all kind of liked exactly like you say, which is cool. You picked up on that big, like, whatever it is, boom, 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 in your face sort of thing. And as much as, and that was a thing at the time as well. It felt like that, it's what we wanted to do.
I mean, when you think about it, music is kind of almost like a very inbred scene because you get like people from different bands coming together, like, Killswitch Engage, Shadows Fall, kind of that new wave of American heavy metal, like they all kind of did the convergence. I mean, I can kind of see that, particularly in like the 80s, 90s, 2000s, like the British music scene was just kind of exploding post Stones and Beatles. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think, and especially that time when Blame Everyone came out, I think a lot of people were scrabbling around to kind of create their own sound out of using all those. I always feel we were a bit, I mean, the Clues in the Title, man, Grand Theft, there was a lot of, like, it was like a collage of things, a lot of it, it was like kind of regurgitation of what we liked, and hopefully something good came out of it, but not always, but most of the time.
I mean, as long as it works for you guys, I mean, in the fan club, I mean, it works perfectly. So, I mean, you kind of just have to say sod it. If, you don't want to exactly kind of go into this cookie cutter, hold into this one particular scene when you can branch out. Yeah.
I think that was always the feeling, was we just always wanted to do something, it's so easy to, and we'd all been in bands like that where you're stuck in one thing where we would actually, I can remember being in bands that I've been previously and you'd reject certain ideas because it was, no, man, that's too, that's too drum and bass. That's, we're a punk band. And you get stuck in this rigid set of rules, and it was kind of nice to just bring all different things to the party, and then get, kind of wring out of it what you'd like, So there was that hip hop thing in there. There was the beats. There was electronica stuff, and and it kind of found that it was actually pretty good stablemates with a bit of punk shouting. It sounded cool, and it was, the only criteria was, do we dig it? Does it sound good? And that was it. There wasn't any other, parameters to it.
Well, I mean, I feel like kind of that melting pot really is what kind of made like, British rock, British metal, British industrial, whatever, British punk, whatever you want to call it in the 90s, 2000, unique comparatively speaking to other countries, because you had that kind of like will it blend mentality with just throwing stuff and seeing what sticks. And like, you even get like other bands such as Pendulum, how they kind of has the drum and bass fusion with a little bit of the industrial and the heavy metal, like they teamed up with In Flames, that kind of thing. So not afraid to push that envelope in both directions. So it's like the punk stuff stayed punk, the heavy metal stayed heavy metal, but like if you wanted to go more down a pop thing, it went all the way into arena rock land almost.
Yeah. Well, I remember, like there was just so many bands. It was really cool to be in London at that point as well, because you could go out any night of the week and there would be, 200 bands playing. That would be something that you'd go, wow, that's a new take on things. I can always remember in the 90s, especially our bands like Dub War, I remember at the time hearing them, and that was the first time I'd ever heard anyone do anything like that. It had bits of, obvious comparison with bits of Bad Brains, but it had bits of hip-hop in it, it had bits of dub in it, it had bits of reggae in it, it had bits of metal in it, and obviously now Benji's now doing skin drill or whatever. But you know, like there was a lot of that around. I think a lot of people were unconsciously trying to formulate new things out of something to represent us, I suppose, at that point.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes perfect sense. I mean, so yeah, I know that's a great way of framing your music. So now the band formed in 1998 between you, Rich, Chris McCormick, and Ralph Jezzard. I know Rich was in the Wild Hearts prior to GTA. I mean, exactly how did all of you meet? I know you alluded saying you and Chris were mates. How did the rest of you guys meet up?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was in a band called Real TV, which was kind of a punk kind of band. You know, maybe a little bit more than punk, you know, but whatever. That was a band, and we were in England. It probably won't mean much to you, but there was a magazine at the time called Kerrang, which was like a kind of. You ever heard of Kerrang? And it was like the kind of weekly heavy metal kids stroke alternative magazine for people who are into that sort of music, harder music. Rich was in the Wild Hearts, and they were like, you know, a staple of Kerrang. And then Real TV started to get a bit of interest. So I always think our connection came through that. Rich came and saw us play, completely my mistake, one night in a small bar to like no one. And he just really liked the band. And then we went literally overnight from playing to no one to the Wild Hearts took us on tour and, you know, really gave us our first break, which, you know, I've never stopped being grateful for, because it was suddenly we were in like the real, you know, big leagues, you know, and we went overnight from that to like being on a proper tour with proper, you know, stages and proper PAs and proper audiences, and it really helped us. And so that was our connection. But Rich and I personally just never really spoke on that whole tour. I'd speak to Ginger, I'd speak maybe to Danny a bit, but I didn't speak to Rich at all really, but he just kind of remembered me, I think. Chris has been in Three Colours Red, which was a band similar at the time to mine, you know, both struggling to get heard, and then Chris got success with that, and so he had his own career separately. And he was just been my friend. We just met and we just clicked, and we'd always sort of played a lot of shows together when we were in the little leagues. And he'd kind of moved on. And Ralph I'd never met before I joined the band. He produced an album for Rich and the Wild Hearts, and he was kind of Rich's mate. You know, I'd never met him before. So that's kind of how we all loosely knew each other. So when it came, it was like cherry picking. It reminded me a bit of, you know, when you were at school, I don't know if they do this in America, but you at break time or lunchtime, and you'd be playing some sort of game when you were a kid, and you go, in England, it's big in football, where you say, right, okay, we're going to pick your team. You go on in, and you try and get all the best ones, you know, on your team. And it was a bit like that. You sort of went through the kind of cherry picked, oh, we'll have this guy and have this guy, and that's how it came together. But it wasn't necessarily because we hung around together all the time before, you know, we'd see each other at things and be, you know, but that was it. It was very, very odd like that.
So the early days of GTA were kind of like you picking up members of the Stoke-on-Trent Football Club.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It was just, who can we get? Yeah. I mean, I wasn't the first like singer they tried out. It was Ralph and Rich started first as like a project. The band was always a project. It was always like you know, just a thing going on between them two. And I think they tried a few singers and other people in other bands. You know, I think Jason, do you remember the band A? Do you remember those guys?
Oh,
yeah, Jason came and I think they did something with him for a while. And then it was just Rich phoned me out of the blue, which was really odd. I don't even know how he got my phone number, which was just really odd. And said, oh, do you want to come down and do it? And, you know, the day I arrived, I think we recorded the first track for the album. That was when it sort of went rolling on from there, really.
Nice, really nice. So Blame Everyone came out in the year 2000, and as I talked about, the Sputnik music thing was described as a mix of rock, metal, and electronica, and we already talked about that unique sound. Did you have any EPs or demos prior to Blame Everyone?
As Grand Theft Audio.
Okay, so self-titled.
Yeah, no, we didn't really do anything. It was really the whole history of this band is really odd how it worked. I mean, we never all played together in the same room until the first time we did, like practically until the first show. We kind of created the album in the studio we had. And you know, like we didn't do any of that. We bypassed all that. We'd all been in other bands for so long. There wasn't any like pitching demos around, or we made a video for the first single, and we sent it out, and it went out to America, and then we got signed, and that was it, you know. And it was like, you know, wow, we better actually deliver the goods now, you know. I hadn't really thought that far. It was just like, really, you want to sign us, you know? So, you know, it kind of was born out of getting the opportunity, not the other way around. You know, we didn't chase it as such. It just, you know, we were very, very lucky, and I think as well, it was, you know, it's worth mentioning that we were probably on the last wave of bands that could ever happen for, where, you know, those days now, obviously, as you know, are just gone, where people are throwing money around speculatively on you know, things like that don't happen anymore. It was like the movies, you know, where a guy turns up with a cigar, you know, like, you guys are going to be huge, you know. It was kind of like that.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I remember back in the days, like bands as like promoters are just salivating over promoting them left and right. Like, you know, you would kind of like slip like a demo tape into their pocket. Like, I know Theory of the Dead, and I think they, according to like rumors, that's kind of how they got signed, was like by slipping a demo tape into like Chad Kroger's pocket or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Now,
I mean, we didn't know. We always knew that it needed to be, you know, what little we did speak about it, we always knew it needed to be in America. It didn't, you know, in the UK was kind of like shooting into, you know, it was like shooting in a barrel in the UK, because we'd all were quite well known there.
mm-hmm.
And, you know, it wasn't going to be a hard thing for us to achieve a certain level of interest, but we all thought for the music we were making just suited America at the time, not here. But we didn't know anything about America. You know, we had a good manager, and we had a great attorney guy contact in the States, and it just, you know, I mean, we really had very little to do with it. It just kind of took the video, and that sold us. It was like, here are these guys. Actually, that was the first time we ever performed together. It was in the video. That was the first time we'd ever all stood in a room and actually played together. Yeah, and he just took that and said, here are these guys, this is the album. It was all ready to go. You know, who wants it? And, you know, luckily for us, like, a lot of hands went up in the air. So, you know, we were really, really blessed. I hate that saying, but it was, you know, really lucky.
Oh yeah, no, I remember like when I first saw Blame Everyone at, like, you know, showing my age, Tower Records in the United States, like in like that far corner where it was like the time, like maybe 3 bays of like industrial records and whatnot, and like Kharkov, and I'd be like, okay, Common Christ got that, KMFDM got that, ooh, Grand Theft Audio, $25 US, okay, that's lawnmower money, so let's just go ahead and just do that.
Yeah. I'm really amazed you got past that hideous cover. That cover would have put me off. If it was me, I would have looked.
The blonde spiky hair.
Yeah, like Vanilla Ice or something. Just, I don't know what the concept was with that, but I still don't. You know, it's just the only thing I look back and think, God, how did that happen? But you know.
No. I mean, you look like Spider from Power Man 5000 with that hair.
Yeah. That was a big look then, wasn't it? That bleached hair. I used to get when we very first came to America, just about the same time as what's the name of the band? Oh, I can't remember the name of the band. The massive famous band with the guy with the blonde hair.
There's a lot of those in the States.
Yeah. But I used to get mistaken for this guy all the time, and I actually thought, do you know what? I'm going to have to change the colour of my hair or do something. But as it turned out, you know, we just it didn't matter that much in the long run. But yeah, it was definitely a look at the time.
I mean, you could have passed off as early stages of Duff McKagan.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Well, we were drinking enough. We could have easily, but given him a run for his money, I reckon, at that point.
Well, yeah, exactly. Okay. Now, who did the majority of the songwriting for the album? Was it you? Was it Chris? Was it Ralph? Was it Rich?
For Blame Everyone, I would say the majority of it was probably Rich and Ralph. I mean, I did all the lyrics bar one song. But musically, they were just on it at that point. They were like, they had a vision. Ralph really had this vision. He was like, no, it's got to be like this, it's got to be like that. And he was so, you know, there wasn't any vegetarian option about anything. It was like, look, this is it. You know, it's going to be like this. And he was right. He really read the time right. So they did. I would say they did the majority. I mean, it's credited to most of the credits to myself and Rich and Ralph. And Chris, but Chris kind of came in later. You know, no fault of Chris. It wasn't that he wasn't capable of writing or anything like that. It's just that he joined after the album was kind of done, because we had to. And again, the strangest of the situation, we hadn't thought that far. And suddenly, when we got signed, it was like, well, we've got to go out and tour this. We've got to be an actual band. and that had never come on the agenda, and that's why I was like, great, let's get Chris. And Rich was like, let's get Chris, because we've got an ally in all of this. Chris is one of my close friends, and we'll get him. And so he never got a chance really. I think one song he wrote, but he kind of just arrived too late for that. But we made up for it partying. So he was happy.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Now, did you have a favorite track on Blame Everyone? Any track in particular comes out? I mean, besides Stupid Ass.
Yeah, I like. It's not much I don't like actually, but I like. I probably still like Death to the Infidels quite a lot, because it's the first track on the album, and just because it's so dumb, like it's da 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 da, it's just like repeatedly being hit in the face, which I quite like. But probably that, and Dead Men Leaving as well, because it's just that was one Chris and I wrote together in his house, just as a last final word on the album, and it's just a punk dum 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 for meat and veg one.
No, I mean, Death to the Infidels is definitely my favorite one. I mean, just that wall of sound that just comes in out of nowhere. It just kind of hits you straight up in the face. I mean, it's like an audio version of the cover of Vulgar Display of Power. Like, you're just getting right in the face. And I mean, Rock the House, I mean, that's like the party song for like the metalheads. As Good as It Gets is always my favorite. I mean, pretty much the whole album is just something I hold near and dear. So.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
That's really cool. It's really nice when you, I think, being the sort of size of the band that we were, you don't often get a chance to hear what people thought of it. We kind of also an A&R other band nowadays, so it's quite nice to hear what our actual people, related to it once they got it, because for us, you just put it out there, and we were all, like I said, busy partying and getting on with the job, and you very rarely sort of ever stop to sort of like, oh, what did you think of it? That was kind of not on the agenda. On to the next thing,
Well, I mean, it's Blame Everyone, at least for me, and other people can say one thing or the other. Like, there was no similarity. Each song was completely different. So you would go from like, Death to the Infidels, very like industrial sound. We Love You, very punk. Blame Everyone, not Blame Everyone. Shit. Stupid Ass, industrial. Gray, Black, and White, slow, almost kind of uneasy, almost kind of like a Doom vibe to it. So, I mean, it wasn't like we get a lot of bands. It's like the same, like, cookie cutter sound each song with, like, little differences here and there. Like, you really were left scratching your head. Like, if you were listening to this album for the very first time, you were just kind of like, okay, the song is this. Then its segues completely different. And get into these parts later on, but almost like, it's kind of like the new songs you guys are putting out. Like, there's no expectation that each song is going to be similar. Like, is it going to be punk? Is it going to be grunge? Is it going to be rock? Is it going to be dropping beat?
I mean, that was that's a really conscious thing as well. That's not like just happenstance. That's not, just a happy coincidence. We one of the few things we sat down was like, I always saw it as I wanted to make albums. Of my favorite albums are those kind of ones where it's like you can pick a track off it that relates to a mood or a time you're in to suit. And that album is kind of like, it's kind of like having that great shirt that you can wear to formally going out, like that works for everything. There's something in it for everyone. And, like if you had to take one album with you, and you could have a choice of, it's got a wide enough palette that you could not get bored of it. I hate albums where you get the hit single, the very similar second single, and then all the watered down versions which weren't as good as the hit single or the second single. I hate that sort of formulaic stuff. And I find when I listen to music, it's very rarely I can make it for a whole album of anything. I kind of pick. I'm sure a lot of people are the same. Will have that track from this and that and that. And we kind of wanted to do that on an album, like make it it's a different flavour, And it was either going to be a brilliant Technicolor rainbow, or it was going to be, crap brown. But hopefully we got somewhere in between. I don't know.
No, I mean, it was a perfect blend of all different genres. Like, if you were into the rock scene, then you would definitely like all the tracks on Blame Everyone, because it just goes through like a sine wave. It ebbs, it flows, it gets louder, it gets softer, and by the end of when Dead Man Leaving comes on, your head's spinning like a top, and that's even before alcohol kicks in.
Yeah. Well, that's great, because then it's done its job. Because that was very much a conscious thing for us. Was like we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to pigeonhole it into we wanted people to be able to listen to it and go, wow, oh wow, it's gone here, and oh wow, that sounds like Portishead, and then that bit sounds like I'm sure I've heard that in NWA, or and put that stuff together.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of uncomfortable in a way, but that's a good thing to do with music. I think it's just try and like I said, use what you got.
Yeah, Portishead, God, that takes me back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, what even happened to them? What happened to them?
I know. I mean, them and Carpenter Brute. I always wonder what happened to him. But
yeah, there's a lot of people like that. Yeah, when you start thinking back on it, there were people at that time who you would think would be like, well, we're like rock solid, gonna be going on forever, and then things change. But that's good in itself, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean, considering now that like we're living in the time of like watered down, auto-tuned poppy music that has 4 producers, 6 writers, plus the artist. I'm like, oh, come on, y'all. You want that 3-word song?
Yeah. But I think, I don't know about you, but I don't even know if I'd be into music now if I was a kid. Would you? If you, like how you were like fanatical about it. And I think it must be really hard to be like that now because you're so bombarded with choice and stuff and accessibility that it's really hard to get excited about things, and to maintain excitement about it. It's incredible.
I mean, like, and here's an example. Like, somebody came into my store yesterday or Monday, one of the two, and mind you, I have to listen to the same like bad music on our stereos constantly. Like, occasionally I get like a nugget of good music, like Kristen Control or whatever. But like, this person walks in and she's just going, "Bitch, where's my money? Bitch, where's my money?" And I'm like, are we at a casino? Did something happen?
Yeah.
Broke? So like I Googled it. I'm like, oh, that's an actual song. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, how many producers, how many writers?
Yeah, but I think maybe we were the thin end of the wedges. Everything's been like homogenized into dumber and dumber chunks of easily digestible pap. So that you get all of the calories, none of the taste. It's just boom. You've got the product, onto the next thing, boom, boom, boom. And I, when we were talking about doing this again, one of the things that's important this time is, I think we all agreed that the criteria is we'd like to make an album that, when you meet other people and you go like, oh man, you start talking about music and they mention now, oh, he's one of those people. Oh, cool. Yeah, we're going to get on. You like that, and that's what we're trying to chase now is that something a bit more than, without sounding pretentious, don't get me wrong, we're not reinventing the wheel, but we are trying to make something that you could identify yourself as a certain gang of people by knowing that album or liking that album. That's what the hope is.
Well, yeah. And I think you guys maintain that pretty well solidly. Like, even with the new tracks, like, you're going to get a lot of different people from different backgrounds, different walks of life that are going to enjoy Ruin Your Youth, Another Life, whatever other songs you have come, like, waiting in the offing.
Yeah. Well, it's really difficult now because even that is like, I feel like we're revealing, it's like one of those magic eye pictures, because we've released 2 singles today. And it's like, no, you don't get it yet. There's more to come. And I think it's hard for people to reintroduce yourself. One, we can't do Blame Everyone Part 2. We're not going to do, stupid old ass. It's irrelevant. So it is, an interpretation of us, but now. And as you reintroduce that, it is really hard for a band like us because, like you say, we're not a band where you go, well, okay, there's the 3-minute punk pop song, and now the next single is the next 3-minute punk pop song. It does go from thing to thing and hopefully progresses, but the big picture is the album, and hopefully people, when they get that again, will go, oh wow, I see it, But it's a bit frightening at first because you just think, oh well, when we started getting the second single ready, and even I can see, it's really long compared to the first one. It's really different, and so we're not always targeting the exact same audience,
Mm-hmm. Well,
I think that's what makes it more interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's going to draw in more people because you're going to get a wider like array of people checking you guys out. I mean,
you want to cast the net as wide as you can cast it, right?
Exactly, and we'll get into Ruin Your Youth and Another Life in a few minutes. Here's a question that I kind of find interesting. Like, I've never seen Dude, Where's My Car, just because that's not my brand. I mean, it's not my brand of humor. Like, I mean, I prefer like drier, more sarcastic, like kind of humor. Like dick and fart jokes, not my thing.
Yeah.
But I know Love You
I'm
and
with you.
Stupid Ass came out on Dude, Where's My Car? And I know some other tracks were on the Gran Turismo 3 soundtrack. Did
Yeah.
you ever expect to have your music put on a soundtrack?
No. I mean, like that was, again, we were really lucky in so many areas, and we were published by Universal, and we had great friends there who I think gave us, you know, they really championed us for things. I mean, we were on a lot of soundtracks. We were on the Hulk, the Dude, Where's My Car, like several other things, you know, of different, you know, importance and the real thing of like the computer games, you know, we're on FIFA and Gran Turismo, and that was a new thing at the time. You know, to me, that was like, you know, someone who'd been in some crappy old punk bands. It just blew my mind. That was like, I don't understand this. This is all new. And, you know, and it really helped us. You know, that gave us a lot of elbow power at the time. And, you know, I think the Dude, Where's My Car thing, I'm with you. I've never watched it. I watched like 10 minutes of it and I thought, yeah, it's probably not for me. But at the time, you know, there's no denying it was hugely popular to a section of people who wouldn't have seen us or wouldn't have heard of us probably. So, you know, it was great in that respect. You know, and again, just really lucky. I don't know how we kept having that great luck, but yeah, it was very pivotal for us getting those things, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Now, to dovetail off that, here's a fun one for you. If you could have any of GTA's music, whether from the Blame Everyone era or the new one, be on any soundtrack, whether it's a game, movie, or TV show, what would it be?
Oh, wow.
Besides Planet Earth or Blue Planet?
Yeah. That's a tough one. Do you know what? I know what. Just get something new off a new album on Fortnite, then I'll be happy. Because then it'll be the first time one of my kids thinks I'm cool.
I can see it now, like someone going into like Fortnite or like Apex Legends, and all of a sudden you hear like the opening bass riff for Another Life coming up.
Yeah. Oh man! So the minute I hear one of my, you know, because that would basically give me a reason to be able to talk to my second eldest son. That's all he does. It's like Fortnite is, you know. So it'd be like my foot into his world, which would be quite nice.
Actually, now
apart from that, it'd retire.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I could actually see Another Life being on the Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrel soundtrack.
Right, yeah. Well, it's got a bit of, I also think it's got a little bit of that Peaky Blinders kind of thing in it, you know, that kind of, I could see it being something like that. That would be kind of a lazy place to put it. But yeah, the Lock, Stock, yeah, that would work. Yeah, I think you could go anywhere like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do that, go down like the British comedy action hole.
Yeah. The British comedy action hole, that's pretty much describes my entire musical career right there.
Oh, God. Well, I mean, for what it's worth, my musical career consists of, like, trying to sound like Stabbing Westward in a cramped vocal booth and failing miserably.
Oh, dude, yeah. No, that's a good reference. Stabbing Westward. Yeah, I haven't heard of him for ages. Yeah, they were great.
Back in 2007, 2008, my friend Harkov and I and my ex-wife, we actually went to Stabbing Westward, became a band called The Dreaming, which was more of a punk metal thing. They actually played a show in D.C., and, like, we got to meet the band after the show, and Harkov was fanboying like it was nobody's business. And to this day, we still joke about it because Christopher Hall, the lead singer, comes over after the show, like, all the house lights are up. We're talking, and he puts his arm around me. He goes, "Why the fuck are they playing Foreigner?"
Cool. Yeah, awesome.
And Harkov's just absolutely just brain blown. He's like, "I hate you so much." I'm like, "You could have talked to him, man."
Yeah. Well, they're all just people, aren't they? You know, same as everyone. But you're really lucky as well. Like, have you always lived in DC? Is that where you're from?
Yes,
you just.
Mm-hmm.
Oh right, yeah. I mean, like when I was, it's really weird. You know, like I grew up in a place called Essex, which is kind of a satellite of London. It's got a really bad reputation in England for being, you know, full of a-holes, and which is probably not undeserved. But, you know, when I was a kid, especially in the 80s, you know, DC was like, that's where it was at. You basically come from the Mecca, you know what I mean? Because that whole scene then was like, that's all we tried to pretend to live like. You know, we were the Essex branch of Washington DC. You know, so you lucked in.
Well, I mean, the DC music scene was very indie with a little bit of some punk influence. I mean, like, you know, Bad Brains is from the DC area originally, or at least the singers. So, you know, you kind of had that major influence. But it was like, if you wanted to do metal, or punk, you went down to Florida. If you wanted to do metal, like, you would go out to California. I mean, so it was the
Right.
thing. So DC was kind of like this, like, catch a rising star. Like, the bands would go to DC to get their initial, you know, signing and whatnot, and then just kind of branch out from there. But I mean, from what I understand, London had a massive, like, punk scene, like, back in the day, like, even just underground punk scenes. Like, you had the punk rock houses. I know, like, Duff McKagan talked about, like, the punk rock houses, like, what was it, like Cleavage or like Ultra Thin and the Near Death Experience and whatnot. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so here's the loaded question. In 2003, the band broke up. What exactly caused that to happen? Because I know you guys on your website back, you know, when dial-up was still kind of petering out, like, you were talking about new music, you know, new things like Harkov and Gourds.
Well, I think it's like everything. Unfortunately, like there's loads of different aspects to it. So I'll tell you the main ones. The main one was the fact that we came back to England. I mean, we were pretty burnt out, without sounding corny, because blame everyone. We toured it and it was kind of done. The record was done. And just at the point when we should have been thinking about coming back to England and starting to write again, and, you know, how we're going to follow it up. Dude, Where's My Car came out, and that kind of promoted things again. And so we kind of carried on touring, you know, so it kind of reignited that album. And the way it works, obviously, you know, quite rightly, the record label has spent a lot of money on us and they wanted their pound of flesh. So we kept working, you know, when really we should have said, right, that's done now. But so we didn't do that. That was mistake number one. And then we finally did get to come back to London, and we came back and we started work on the second album, and the label, like, literally kind of dissolved from underneath us. That, you know, so for us and a lot of the roster of their artists suddenly found themselves labelless. You know, everyone we knew at the label went. You know, it's a real common story. I think they had a big shake-up at Warner's. London, for whatever reason, London / whatever, it just dissolved over that year. So we were then like labellists, which took away a huge load of the impetus, because you suddenly all find yourself in the room kind of staring at each other going, well, what are we rushing for? What are we doing? You know, and then on the personal side, I think everyone was just really, really knackered. You know, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. That, you know, touring America, you know, we were primarily an American band in that respect, and we worked continually. We toured continually, whether it be, you know, we'd have these great highs where you'd go, right, we've got a gig supporting AC/DC, and it was, you know, amazing. And then we'd be playing, you know, whatever, you know, buttfuck Ohio in this, you know, two-man tavern to like one uninterested bar person, you know. So we had all that. And the east to west travelling, you know, by bus all the time, it's kind of grueling. And we were idiots, which is the other aspect, which I'm neatly avoiding. You get a load of young blokes, or relatively young, you give them a load of money, you tell them that they're going to be, you know, it was quite possible that we were being treated, that there was every chance you were going to be like Green Day or Limp Bizkit or whatever. That's the idea. They don't get you in it to go, well, you might be one of the others. They get you in it to say, you're going to be massive, you're our guys, you know. And so, you know, you get any guys and give them a load of money quickly and a load of people telling you you're brilliant. It's hard not to take some of that on board subconsciously, and you start acting in all those cliche manners, which is why you become why they're cliches. You're drinking too much, we're partying too much, we weren't concentrating enough on working. So those things together, you know, they're not going to motivate you to go, right, let's rally ourselves and, you know, whatever. It was like everyone just kind of sat back in the chair and went, oh, right, okay, let's get on with the rest of our lives. You know, it was that really. So, yeah, many things, nothing amazing. There wasn't any great big showdown or anything like that. It just kind of petered out. But the label going was, obviously we'd have had to swim twice as hard to get back upstream with another label at that point, and we didn't have a new album ready. We didn't have we're all done in. So we kind of just like laid down like 4 old elephants and just waited to die.
That's a great image now that I'm thinking about it. It's tragic, but it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like when I found out the band broke up, like me and Harkov once again, like it was like a science surround sound. Like, cause we were both in college and like I was in, buttfuck, Ohio, going to university, and he was. So I know what you're talking about with like the 2-person tavern. And one of them was an angry bartender just going, "Shut up, go away."
Yeah.
But
I've got nothing against Ohio, by the way. It was just, the first place that came to mind. But, it's difficult to maintain. And we were a band as well that, without sounding cheesy, we did sort of walk it like we talked it, because it was party music. And so we were determined to, I'm some scrote from Essex. I'd never been outside the country really, so to suddenly be doing all this stuff was like, I'm going to, grab life by the throat and shake it to death. It was one of them, so we were all burning the candle at every end all the time. And there's only so long you can do that. And the bands that last really have got the brains to suss that out within the first 3 years. And we were in like year 4 and still going, "Hey, who's partying?" So,
the original party rock and LMFAO took over.
Yeah.
Funny,
it was hard not to.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, quick funny story for you. So, like, back in university, my first producer who did my demos, this was back in, like, 2004, so long time ago, like, we would just have barbecues at his place, and there was a party house across from where he lived, and, like, one time it was like, I don't know what it was like a dress to get screwed party or whatever, so, like, they were blasting, like, Warrant, Journey, like, all the traditional, like, get hammered music. So we snuck over at 1 o'clock in the morning. We were all sober as judges, and like everyone's already passed out or like not really caring. We snuck on, and I put on "Drugs and Girls" by GTA, and I just cranked up to 11 and beat out of there. And it was like lightning struck. I was like, just like watch him go at it.
Thanks for representing, man.
I feel
like you've done a little bit.
Just to see the reactions of these drunkies passed out or like still drinking and whatnot, and like they were like I don't know what, like at that point it was like REO Speedwagon or whatever was on the stereo, and then in comes "Drugs and Girls." Right. Woke the hell up. Good times.
But we used to find in America though, especially, it was like people would react to it so much, like that people wanted you to have a good time, and it was really hard not to get sucked in, because people, like, you go to South Bend, Indiana, and there's nothing happening there, there's nothing going on, and then you come in, it's like the highlight. I can always remember doing a show there, forget playing with like AC/DC or something like that. We did this show there, and it was monstrous. It was like this small club, and it felt like everyone who lived in that area was there. And then they just wouldn't let us go. Like when we played, it was like, right, that's not enough. You got to hang out, you got to party, and this is my cousin, and this is my wife, and you got to meet this, and it was lovely, but it was so full on, like it was like we staggered out. I can remember getting on the bus and it was daylight and thinking, I don't know what day it is anymore. Like I feel like I've been here for eternity. I can't get any more wasted.
Oh.
And it was loads of that, which it just brought that out in people somehow, because I think they could see that we were having a good time, and it was like, let's just keep it going. There was a lot of that.
Very Pantera-like mindset, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so after the initial dissolution of GTA, did you do any kind of musical projects like post GTA before the emergence of it, or what exactly were you up to, I guess, for that 20-year gap?
Well, for the others, they all just carried on in the same vein. The others all did music solidly, career-wise. For me, loads of things changed for me. I mean, it all happened around the same time. I got married. I became a father for the first time then, and I moved to France, which is, so geographically I was away from my roots. So my whole circle of musical friends and that just went overnight. I did do some stuff in France with just really straight with a producer guy who was amazing, who I just happened to meet in a supermarket one day. Just bizarrest thing. I met his wife actually, and this guy was cool and da da da. And we ended up doing some stuff for the French Pop Idol winner of all things. Just totally random. Like you couldn't get more left field. And then Rich and I did a thing together. We did a real metal band called Security. That nothing ever really came of it, but it was the total diametric opposite to Grand Theft Audio. It was just pure, like, this is just tough guy music, like and there's no pop in it.
So kind of like
it's along those lines. It was more like sort of. The guitarist was more like sort of Slayer, or it was loads of and loads of shouting and whatever, and it was great fun. But we never did it, it never went anywhere or whatever. And for me, that was kind of it. Then I sort of hung up my spurs a bit, because your life just sort of goes like that. And I was pootling around on a tractor and living in France, and being a dad and all those things, and writing. I got more interested in writing and. So that was kind of me. But the other guys, they all did, Rich was still doing Wild Hearts. He did some other bands. Chris has done like tons of stuff. I mean, he went and played with Gary Newman, and then he's done loads. And then he's more recently, he's been playing with Professionals, which is with one of the Sex Pistol guys. And he's always doing something else, and he's promoting stuff and all sorts. And Ralph producing, he actually went to the States and worked at Willie Nelson's place for quite some time and produced loads of people. And his back catalogue's like amazing. He just, you name it, he's done it. So, but again, there wasn't any great animosity or big falling out. I suppose everyone just kind of got on with their lives really as orderly as they could, Yeah.
Actually, it's funny, you talking about, this just kind of popped in my head, is like after the band broke up and you were kind of doing your thing, like I got into a band called Pitch Shifter, also from the UK. And and I heard one of the songs, like, is this GTA? Is Jay suddenly like back in his field? Like for a long time, I seriously thought Jay as Clayton, the lead singer of PSI, was you.
Oh, no way. Yeah, well, they like, I mean, funny enough, Jim, the guitarist, he comes from my hometown, and he's like, I've known him for years and years. And we actually did talk about getting a band together, which I dropped the ball at the time because I had just so much going on. But those guys are great. They are like literally from my hometown. So I can see that you could easily make that mistake here. A lot of the same influences and the same sort of sound, even the same accent, I think. So yeah. But no, it's definitely not me. No, he's better looking than me.
Oh, no, I can see with the nose ring.
Yeah. Actually, I might start doing that, pretending I'm John. That might be the way ahead. Actually, give me a bit more kudos.
All right, so now here we go. The big question. Flash forward to 2020. I caught wind that GTA was back together. How long were you guys kind of pootering around behind the scenes before kind of going public that you guys were back together?
Actually, quite a while. Probably the best part of the year, I'd say, before we actually said it was going to be Grand Theft Audio, and we were going to do it again as that band. Ralph got in touch with me, and we just started working on ideas. And the question we've been asked a lot since we got back together, what was this? Well, that question comes up a lot. What made you want to do it? And I can honestly say there wasn't a big sit down meeting and say we're going to do it. It just kind of evolved. And if he'd have said even a year before, "Oh, do you want to do some music?" I said, "Oh, I haven't got time," or "I don't want to do it," or whatever. It just really naturally evolved in, through our old friendship into just like, well, let's just write some stuff, not for any reason, not to do anything with it, just for ourselves, like an indulgence,
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as Rich got involved again, it just then became obvious that it was the band again, and I don't know, just one of those things. Like waking up one day and you've got herpes. Do you know why? It just suddenly came out. It was like, wasn't here yesterday, but all of a sudden it's developed, and now you've got to deal with it. It was like that.
Great. So you went from Grand Theft Audio to audio herpes.
Yeah, viral herpes. Yeah,
It's the result of too much stupid ass.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Oh, God.
There's an image for you, right?
I knew this was going to degenerate quickly.
Yeah, it's
So,
kind of flare up every 20 years.
this is all over my face. Oh, damn it.
Yeah,
All right, so your first new track is called Ruin Your Youth, and personally, I feel like that has more of a Ramones era punk kind of thing sound to it.
yeah.
Obviously, we talked a little bit about this already, but was there a reason you turned to more of a rock-based sound and less of that industrial kind of original OG kind of sound?
Yeah, because I mean, we got one of the tough things is we seemed to have amassed a mountain of material. So we weren't struggling for song choices. So it kind of was like when you reintroduce yourself and a toe in the water, you know, it felt for us that we just wanted to do our strengths were always, you know, like we could write a catchy hook. We could write a kind of, we always had that kind of oomph to it. And we just wanted to, I think it would have been really crap for us to come back with, there are tracks on the album that hark back more to Blame Everyone. They got more of that stupid ass, more of that beats and, you know, samples and stuff like that. And it just felt like that was the wrong thing to come back with straight away, because it would be like 20 years and you know, you've got like a We Love You B-side, you know, and we just wanted to go in a way to sort of wrong foot people. And the idea of coming, I mean, apart from the fact as well that Chris wasn't with us, so it was me on guitar, we just wanted to make it all different. So it was just a reintroduction of like, you know, it's still the same arseholes, different sound, you know, and now we're going to do this, and then you're going to get more as we go on, you know. But yeah, it was one of the more basic, like trad sounding songs, you know, like more like Dead Men Leaving, just a kind of punky.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
I loved it. You know that song, you know.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I love Ruin Your Youth, and like, I could see it being like used at like a football club game or something like that, like West Ham versus Stoke or something like that. Ruin Your Youth.
Yeah.
It's kind of the middle finger to Robbie Williams.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was just a good stomping, you know, and I think as well, even lyrically, you know, that kind of was a bit tongue in cheek, you know, because we're all a lot older and all that. So there's something nice about kind of stomping about, you know, talking about having ruined your youth, you know, when we're all in advanced middle age, you know. So it was short, it was snappy, it was a good introduction back to say like, hey, it's us, you know, and whatever. And so it wasn't too demanding.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I think that's its strength, really.
Mm-hmm. Now, continuing on to the Ruin Your Youth song, I mean, I saw the Q&A you guys did on YouTube regarding what the song was about, but for the majority of my viewers, my audience that haven't seen it, describe what Ruin Your Youth is about, just because, you know, just the title, Ruin Your Youth, it's got kind of a harkening back to the Brit punk era. It's like, you know, Johnny Rotten blowing snot rock and saying, we're going to ruin your youth. I mean, so in your words, what would you consider Ruin Your Youth to be about?
Well, it was, funny enough, it was something that I came up with just really like looking at my own kids and what a kind of rite of passage it was in my youth to be able to ruin your youth, to be able to exploit your youth, you know, like it was kind of expected. And I think kids now have lost some of that, you know. As I sort of touched on before, I think things are so hard now to be a kid. You know, you were given a lot of slack, really, in my generation, because, you know, people go, oh, yeah, he's a fucking idiot, but he's a kid. You know, that's what kids do. Whereas they don't now. I think kids have got to be accountable on all fronts for everything. You know, my kids are really, which I'm sure the same, I'm sure it's the same in America, but thanks to social media, my kids are so protective and guarded about what they give of themselves out to the world, because you have to be, because you could wrong foot yourself so easily now and be destroyed for it, you know. And I think that's a huge amount of responsibility for someone who's not even been allowed to play the full game yet, you know. And I think especially now that you are expected to be a much more rounded person than you should be at that age. I think part of the amazing stuff that comes out being a kid is happenstance and trial and error, and sometimes not having the good sense not to do something. You know, like if youth was run by adults, there would be nothing fucking happen. You know, like it would just, you know, the best thing about being a kid is going, do you know what? I don't care about the consequence. I'm going to do this, bam, 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 this, that, and the other. And I'm going to say, and out of that chaos, new things come. You know, like, hate to bring them up again, but look at the Sex Pistols. They were like kids when that happened. They were like 17, 18. That changed the world de facto. You know, nowadays, would a kid take that chance? I don't know if they would. You know, I think they'd probably strategize it and plan it and make it completely, you know, homogenized until there wasn't any magic left. And that's really the principle behind it was, you know, I just think that kids have lost something by everything they've gained in terms of accessibility to the world. I think there was a lot to be said about fighting your corner, you know, coming out with your things, developing your own take on the world. And some of that's been, the edges have been nicely rounded off by social media, and you know, which makes me sound like an old fart, but I really think there's something in that, you know.
No, I mean, I agree with you because, like, I often tell my friends, like, growing up in the 80s, like, I grew up way too fast, military family, like, we moved around a lot, you know, so, like, at a young age, I was, like, you know, study hard, go to university, or flipping burgers at McDonald's, or, like, you know, turning waffles at Waffle House, you know, instead of, like, exploring your youth, exploring your personality, exploring your feelings. And like, I almost feel like now we're almost kind of going back in time because we have cancel culture. We've got like the snowflake conventions, and every little thing pisses people off. I'm like, you know what? Fuck all this. I want to explore who I am. I want to explore my options. I want to, you know, I want to be in Bad Brains. So I'm going to go out, I'm going to try, or I'm going to do this. You know?
Well, totally. I mean, you know, like when I say ruin your youth, I don't mean any of that stupidity, like, you know, take loads of drugs and all that. But that is, you know, no one wants to say it anymore, but that is part of it. It's all part of that thing, you know, the experimentation in your, you know, your identity. Even that's become like a commodity now. I hate the fact that you see there's like whole genres of like kids who all act the same way. And I just think, but even when I was a kid, you'd see that punker guy, but everyone seemed to have a different side to them because they weren't all communicating and wearing it like a uniform. There was a punker guy, but you go in his house, you know, like, and he'd have Pink Floyd on, and you start talking, you find out he was a big pothead, or, you know, like they didn't all sort of fit into categories, you know. And I feel like now that's been so like, it's so cynical, all of it, far more cynical than anything was when I was a kid. You could blunder through stuff, and you know, and like I say, blundering through things, you know, these great explosions would happen because of it, because you weren't, oh, I've made a mistake, but it was interesting and it was good, and, you know, like you say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I feel like that's changed, and kids have got a lot of adults' ideas put upon them, you know.
I mean, back as a kid, I mean, to quote Jeff Foxworthy, he's like, we used to have lawn darts, you know, 12-inch darts. We'll just take them and throw them straight up in the air.
Yeah.
You catch one with your head, you're getting coloring books for Christmas for the rest of your
life. Definitely. When I was a kid, we saved our lunch money to buy an air gun. You know, this is old fart territory. We used to go, oh, when we were kids, we had toys, they were all lethal. You know, it was true, you know, and part of the fun of it was knowing you were doing something wrong and willfully doing it to see what happened. And I think that now everyone goes, oh, that's wrong, I thought about it, oh, I don't know, but X might lead to Y and Z, so I better not do anything. And that my kids are like that. My kids are really like that. They think of the consequence before they think of the, you know, anything else is where it leads. And I think that's a sad way to live. I think you don't be reckless with your life, but don't be frightened out of living by other people. You know, that's crazy to me.
I mean, if you wake up in bed next to a goat, you know, just tell the goat stop hogging the covers. It's not that bad.
Exactly. No, you kiss it and you respect it.
And then you say, give me the covers. No.
Yeah, then you move on. Yeah.
Exactly. You're just like, okay, you fancy a cuppa? Okay, cool, get out. No.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So now your most recently released song is called Another Life, which has more of a garage or grunge sound to it. Once again, I've seen the music video, I've read the lyrics, but for those in my group that have not, can you describe what Another Life is about?
Another Life, kind of the theme behind it was, you know, for me, again, lots of it, you can't help it because you write about where you're at. And for me, it's kind of a middle-aged, you know, tongue-in-cheek reflection on yourself. And you know, you look back at things and you think, well, am I the good guy or the bad guy? And I think for most people, it's never really that clear cut. Whereas everything, again, I sound like I'm on a real rile against social media, but everything now is driven at making clear, defined, straight-edged choices about everything. You've got to make big, bold statements about everything, and I just think everything can't be everything all the time. You know, no one is ever all the good guy or all the bad guy. There are moments in your life where you'll weave between the two, and if you're lucky, you'll have a balance of not being too much of either. But you know, so that was like kind of behind the idea of it lyrically, was like, you know, if I could have another life, you know, don't judge me like saying that, you know, don't judge me on how you see me or what I actually am. In my other life, I'm a decent man, you know.
Yeah.
Just, I think everyone's got that. No one in their head thinks they're the bad guy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I mean, I feel like nowadays more people are so focused on either the black or the white. They're not focused on that gray area, which is where every single human is. They're not perfectly good, or they're not. I mean, it's almost like, not to get nerdier for a second, it's almost like a Dungeons and Dragons character. Like, are you lawful good, lawful evil, chaotic good, chaotic evil, neutral? Like, there's this big spectrum of like characterizations that you can go through.
Yeah, and also I think it's become a spiritual quest to be. It's like this sort of like new mysticism of like it is imperative that you're pure on every level, and I just don't believe that's true. I don't believe you should be an arsehole, and I think certain things are inherently understood to most people, and the fact that you have to explain them to most people, it baffles me. You know, you don't need to. I don't need to go and stand out in the street and say, hey, don't be a racist, don't be a homophobe, don't be, you know, those to me are givens. And I'm not saying those issues aren't happening, they're happening every day, but I don't believe that, you know, getting caught on the minutiae of an issue is helping resolve it. I think it's dancing about architecture. Do you know what I mean? You're kind of uselessly repeating the same thing to people who already agree, you know, and the next thing, you know, what comes next. And there's just too much of that in the world for me.
It's almost like a blurred line how I often say that people do a lot of this dancing around or repeating themselves ad nauseum because they want to kind of feel the sense of normalcy. But like, you know, they want to be part of it. That's why there's titles slapped onto every little thing. You know, I'm assistant vice president of, you know, assistant commerce for the rubbish collection agency in South, you know, Essex. I don't know. But
you're right though. That's the thing, is that kind of collectivism of things. I can see the appeal in it, and that in itself is a reflection of where people's psyche is now. When I was younger, the whole idea was to be an individual, and that was the goal. That was the dream. You took pride in being different from the guy next to you, no matter how much you'd have stuff in common, but you were desperate to be your own man or your own woman. And I feel like now there's kind of a laziness about it to me. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, I'll just I'll become this thing, you know, because it's easier to adopt all that than it is to, you know, create something out of all these different elements. I just think, you know, it doesn't matter what you do, just look at everything and you know, formulate yourself.
Well, I feel like imitation, the best form of flattery, it's almost like a Mobius strip. Like, you go in one end and you're eventually going to come full circle because you're so determined to like imitate your heroes and your influences, your inspirations, that it's basically self-fulfilling prophecy. You'd rather be like, you know, I like this person's vocal style. I like this person's guitar style. I like how this person like dresses. I like the lyrics behind this. And, you know, or even just in life in general, like, you know, this girl's cute. This girl's got a good personality. Here's the chick I want to get with. Or dude, if that's your style. I mean, you know.
Yeah. No, it's difficult now, and I think it's been made more difficult for people to engage in the world honestly, you know, and openly. And you know, I find that scares me more than anything else. It's, you know, give me your opinion. I'm interested in it, not someone else's. You know,
we're determined to go into the matrix.
Yeah, definitely. Running all the way.
Oh, God. All right, just a few more questions for you. What would you say is the future of Grand Theft Audio? Obviously, new music's coming out. Will there be tours in the future, or is it just you guys going to become a studio band? I mean, what's kind of the future as a whole?
Well, This is something we've been talking about a lot recently, because obviously now things are starting to slowly open back up here. Then I think they are for you, or I don't know where you're at now, but for us, there's now talk about things start to open back up again. So the live thing comes up. I think we'll definitely play live shows if there's people who want to see us, but we will definitely do that. We will continue, and I think our thing is, as I sort of said earlier, it's always been a project band, and it's always been an outlet. What we want for it going forward now, we're all middle-aged guys, is we want it to remain an outlet for whichever way we want to express what's in us. You know, so there isn't a criteria of like, this will forever be a dance-orientated rock band. It will be us as we grow, and, you know, that's sounding too pretentious, what comes out of us. You know, I'm excited for people to hear some of the stuff that we've been working on, because it is that you can tell it's like, okay, this isn't retreading the same ground, this is something new, and da 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 da, and you know, and that's what we hope to sort of maintain, is just like a keep it rolling, keep it going, as you know, wherever we feel it should go. I'm making it sound like we're going to suddenly go, now here's our Latino dance music, you know.
No.
But you know, it's again, we're really lucky to have got it together enough to be able to use it as an outlet, and that's how we see it now. It's different. The confusion of, you know, that time for the first album, where there, like I said, there's every opportunity and a lot of pressure that, you know, you're getting signed on the expectation of, hey, you might be, you know, Limp Bizkit or whatever. That's not there anymore. So you can just concentrate. Yeah, but you can just concentrate on going, well, what is it that we like? What is it that's interesting about it to us? And that was making music and, you know, going, oh, this is great, and getting excited about what we're doing. And so that's where we hope to just keep on driving forward with it. So we will just keep plowing on. Live, obviously, we're going to do, if there's a chance to talk, we will do, you know, and we will, for the meantime, though, we will continue to put out singles. We're going to put an album out this year. We really need to reconnect with our American audience as well, though. That's the thing at the moment. It's all been very, for obvious reasons, because everything going on, we've been so sort of centred in the UK again. And I feel like a huge chunk of our friends are America, and we haven't really managed to connect back with them yet. So hopefully we'll be rectifying that over the next few months.
Well, you've got a street team representative over here now.
Yeah, man, wicked. Thanks, brother.
No problem.
Yeah, we need it. Get it out there.
Instead of blame everyone, it's blame some people.
Yeah. Don't blame me.
Oh, God. All right. So this one's kind of hokey, so I apologize for that. But, you know, in the majority of your songs, you not just the new stuff, but like, you know, As Good as It Gets, We Love You, Avarice. Like, there's always this kind of underlying air of solidarity, standing up for what you believe in, and being yourself. I mean, if you had to kind of like typecast a role for Grand Theft Audio's music, would you consider that be yourself solidarity kind of thing be the central focus in your music, or is it kind of an amalgamation of topics? I mean, if you had to pinpoint a topic, what would you consider it?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm really glad you even pick up on that, because a lot of people don't. But I would say exactly that. I think I've always been interested in personal politics of, you know, again, be whatever you want to be, but be you. Don't be someone else's representation of what you know. The worst thing in life to be, I think, is your idea of what someone else wants you to be. What could be more boring and confusing than that? And you're always wrong anyway. So I just think, you know, if we do have any ethos, it is exactly that. It is be yourself. Be good and bad, good, bad and ugly. Be true to yourself and be what you are. You know, it's not always going to be to everyone's taste, but, you know, fuck it. Nesquik's not to everyone's taste, but it's doing all right, you know. It's just, that's the way you got to think about it.
Well, I mean, Nesquik's good until you're stirring it, and then, like, the chocolate blows up in your face.
Yeah.
You ever get the lazy eye from drinking too much Nesquik? You get the explosion.
Yeah.
Bad news.
Oh, I love that stuff. When I was a kid, God, maybe that's the problem. I used to drink tons of that. We were never allowed it in our house because it came in the door, and it was like from dot one, it was in the door, and then you're all cranked up on it for like 4 hours, and then it's in the bin, you know.
You just snort a line of Nesquik. You know, you don't even put it in a glass anymore.
Yeah, absolutely, mainlining it.
Exactly. All right, and the last question. What sort of advice would you have for those that would want to break into the music scene? You've got the experience, you've got the CV, you've got the records to prove it. What sort of advice would you have?
Do you know what? I mean, I'm not sure that we because this time around it's a learning curve for us because it is so the landscape is so different. But if I had any advice, I would say it's hoary, but I would say talent can go to the grave unsung. You know, you need a bit of luck, but the main thing is persistence. The main thing is persistence. Someone said that to me years ago, and I by the time we did Grand Theft Audio, I'd been in bands for 11 years or 12 years, and I had never made a single buck at doing it, not one. So you can forget that, you know, like if you're in it for those reasons, get a job because it's a lot easier to make money that way. You just have to want to do it, and persistence will always win. I know plenty of talented people who've gone unsung because life's like that. You get to a point where you can't maintain it. You know, you don't want to be the only guy who can never afford to buy a drink at the bar, who can never, because you're in a band, you've got no money, and people get married and their lives change and they fall away to the side. But if you are determined and you stick with it, you know, it will always come through. You know, persistence will always out. It really does. You know, like any job, you know, it's the same principle. And I think people now are really blinded by, oh, what I'll do is I'll get loads of followers, I'll do that, and it's all easy. Nothing's easy, you know.
No, hell no.
Well, we're finding it now. We're starting from, you know, the ground up. It's 20 years later, people will remember you like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. But, you know, everyone's got lives. They're not going to devote their life to following you around and enabling you to make music. You've got to fight for it. You've got to, you know, you've got to struggle a bit. You've got to go out of your way. We've all got our own lives. We've got families. We've got jobs. We've got kids. You have to want to do it and do it for the right reasons because you like what you're doing. Anything else, you know, is irrelevant. Don't do it for any other reason, you know.
No, yeah, no, that's sage advice. I mean, I feel like complacency is like the crux of this generation. Like they get into a position, or they start YouTube, or they start streaming, or they start a band, and they're just like, oh, okay, well, everything's good to go, and then like you just plateau, and then it just drops off the cliff.
I think, I think as well. Like we sound like those two old dudes on the Muppets, you know, the old guys.
Statler and Waldorf.
yeah. But I think, you know, this is another thing. Like my son, again, it's a really good example. I remember talking to him, and he had his Insta account or whatever. And I said, what's that? And I was like, quite well, you've got like, I don't know what it was, like 10,000 followers. Oh, yeah. A friend of mine, he got me this and he sorted them out for me. And I was like, so you've got all these like kind of pretend followers for this pretend thing, you know, what's the point? You know, like, I just didn't get it at all. And I think that, but to him, that represented success. You know, and that's the definitions have changed. And I just think, no, success is doing something you're passionate about and having one person turn around and go, oh, yeah, I get what you're on about. That's it. You know, it isn't any more than that. You know, numbers and stuff don't mean anything. You know, it will come and it go. Money's the same. You know, it just, you have to have that reward of going, I did something I'm really proud of and one other person got it. That's it.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
And you have to have a good haircut.
Well, yeah, I mean, that goes without saying. Well, thank you so much, Jay, for taking the time out of your day to talk to me, answer my questions, put up with my fanboying. I really do appreciate it.
Dude, it was a pleasure, real pleasure. Honestly, anytime, it's no problem. It's lovely to speak to you.
Awesome. So for those of y'all that don't follow Grand Theft Audio, I will be putting links in the description below to their website, their Twitter page, and their YouTube page. Give them a follow. Give them a subscription. Check them out. Spread the word. GTA is coming back. New merch, new danger. Cannot wait to continue hearing the sounds. And as always, a big thank you to Christoph Frey for being a sponsor of my project. Link is in the description below if you like excellent low poly horror games. And of course, I'm not going to pimp myself out, so my usual ways to follow me are at the very bottom of the description. So as always, with that being said, y'all, I hope you have a fantastic day. And always remember, keep your fires burning.